Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Kozlowski, and thank you very much for that introduction. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a different topic from some of the things that we've been talking about, although quite related to everything that we've been going over so far about how APIs can be beneficial to different companies. And for us, it was particularly important to look at APIs as a way to really engage the global community and help us be global right from day one. So first of all, just a quick question. How many of you actually use Evernote? Makes me very happy. So I won't spend too much time explaining what Evernote is, but I will just briefly describe it, because even when I'm talking to people who've been using it for 5 years, usually they're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that, I didn't know I could do that, I didn't know I could do that. But essentially what Evernote is it's a service that lets you capture anything that you want to capture, whether it's images, text, PDFs, web pages, etc., share them across all of your different devices, access and find them easily. So our secret sauce is really in the search capability of being able to find text that's within images or any of that type of content that you're trying to find, no matter where you are. We have a series of products, some of which were ours from day one, some of which came, by the way, through our API program as developers started building things, and then we actually turned them into products. Evernote Food is an example of that. That was actually part of our developer program, and we eventually acquired them. But so we have Penultimate, which is our handwriting application, Clearly, which is part of our web clipper now, which lets you actually separate out text. Sketch we call that our point and grunt application of like, here, do this right now with a big pink arrow. Evernote Food, Evernote Hello, Web Clipper, and Peak. And so these are actually sort of our core set of products, but they are all built off of Evernote itself. And this is something else that's pretty unique about us, is the API that we share with our developer community is the very same API that we use internally to develop. So it's really kind of we're at a perfect example of that developer community that's both internal and external. Most recently, about a year ago, we launched Evernote Business. And this is the business version of Evernote. So 2/3 of our users were already using Evernote at work. And so this was the perfect sort of extension of that to take a look at how can we actually capture more of that audience there as well. So that's kind of the next phase for our API as well, is really developing the business applications around the Evernote service. So let's talk a little bit about where we are. Evernote has 10 offices around the world. 2 of them are in the US. And the unique thing about these offices is, as we mentioned before, and I'll show you the breakdown shortly, but 73% of our users are outside of the US. However, far more than 73% of our staff is inside the US. So this office, this office, this office, this office, one person. So the office is actually contained within a person. We do have a physical presence, but some of our offices are literally just one person managing a very, very large region, including partnerships, including marketing, etc. And we've been able to stay very lean and mean when it comes to international, partially because of our API. We started out from day one wanting to engage the developer community, because as we developed our product, something that was extremely important about the way Evernote developed is we don't change our product for any particular country. Our app is the same everywhere in the world. We have a slightly different service in China, but it's the service that's slightly different. It's the product that's exactly the same. So the way that we've always approached this is, if you're building something that's really good, if you're building something that's premium, you can build it the same the world over. And if it is really premium and it is really good, and somebody has a specific use case in Russia, or somebody has a specific use case in Korea, or somebody has a specific use case in Japan, that's probably something that's relevant to everyone in the world. So instead of just saying we're going to develop a Japanese version that works for Japan specifically, we said if there's something useful in Japan, we're going to integrate it into the rest of our product and send it out to the rest of the world. If it's that valuable, it's going to be valuable to everyone. But there is a certain amount of customization that needs to happen. So this is our distribution of our user base around the world. Japan is extremely important for us. China is extremely important for us. The UK is extremely important for us. Korea, Brazil, etc. A lot of very familiar names here, but a lot of very, very, very large user bases in areas where we don't have a single person, and in some cases have never even set foot. I went to Africa for Evernote for the first time 3 weeks ago. That was the first time anybody from Evernote had gone to Africa on business, and we already had 800,000 users there. So we look at expansion as being able to say, how can we actually take advantage of the developer community to create those local experiences that more deeply engage global users without actually having to develop those uses ourselves. So just a little bit about our API. We have about 30,000 developers in our community right now. We get about 12 billion API calls per month, which I know compared to Twitter and others is quite small. But for us, it's quite important. It's been a great source of acquisitions for us. It's been a key part of our international expansion. And also, it's been a key part of our revenue strategy. So users who use third-party applications that are built off of Evernote produce significant, they're much more valuable to us from a revenue standpoint than the users who don't. Now, it's important to note, as we're talking about this, something contextually, we've been talking about big data and some other things today. Evernote is very different in that we don't use big data. We don't mine our customers' data. We don't serve advertising based on our customers' data. We don't do any of that. We are a direct revenue model, so it's all based on the subscriptions of people actually purchasing the service. So that's a key differentiator for us in how our users use our service, but it also means a different approach to how our API is done as well. As far as people are accessing the application and building on top of that, we're not necessarily selling the data itself. Just a quick snapshot slide of some of the applications that are built off of our platform. And so there's definitely a huge app aspect to our API, but there's also a physical aspect to our API. We recently launched a whole line of physical products that are integrated with Evernote and make Evernote work better and make these particular physical products work better. So we launched the Evernote Market at the end of September, and that includes scanners, that includes a fine point stylus made by Adonit, that includes a lot of different types of tools and products that take advantage of Evernote's API to create a much more integrated, better experience with Evernote itself. So it isn't just about building the apps, it's also about building the extension of the Evernote brand to become a lifestyle company rather than just a software or an application company. As far as engaging the global community, we currently have between 15 to 20 global developer events per year. They could be hackathons, they could be coaching sessions, they could be, web chats with our development team. We have a full program reaching in all different countries to directly engage with the developer community and help them build the applications that run our platform, that run off of our platform. What does this mean? There's a huge developer community across the world, but what we've seen is we've seen really strong emergence in different markets that take advantage of the API to build local or global experiences out of that market. Japan is our #1 user of our API platform. So about 11% of our API usage comes from Japan. This is a really, really interesting approach because when you think about a lot of companies our size or our age, Japan would not be the first market you would assume would be one of our largest markets to engage with. But early on, as soon as we launched the company, we started noticing very, very heavy usage from Japan and decided to directly engage with that community in order to make sure that we're maximizing what we can do for them. And what the developers have built, and I'll show you a couple of examples in just a minute, but what the developers did in Japan was they started to build very, very local applications that took advantage of the global platform and brought us a large number of users and a huge amount of engagement with our data. Germany, Canada, UK, Netherlands, Australia, Switzerland, and the US falls into this same next level of usage of the API across the world. Then Nordic, Spain, France, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore is probably the third level of usage. Now, what's interesting about these countries when you look at them is they almost directly map to our best revenue opportunities around the world when you look at how we're actually structured. So the engagement of the developer community not only gave us additional reach and additional users in those countries, but it also gave us a massive business opportunity as part of our direct business model to really increase the revenue side of the business from these countries. So just a few examples of how it can work slightly differently depending on how the developers want to build on the platform. So these are a few of our applications that have come out of Japan. FastEver has about 10,000 daily users, 50,000 monthly active users. And this is a global application. So this lets you take very quick notes on your phone and have them sync directly into Evernote. Whereas Smart News and a TalkPad are very, very specific to the Japan market. Smart News is a news aggregation service that lets you save and clip articles to Evernote. And then a TalkPad is a fast entry for Japanese characters into Evernote directly as well. So those are very Japan specific, but still you've got 5,000 daily and 20,000 daily on each one of those applications, which is a significant share when you're talking about one country. In other countries, there's been other applications that have been built. Again, some work for us globally and some work for us locally. PowerBot, 250,000 paid users now. So PowerBot has actually shifted to being a paid platform. So they truly have built a business off of the Evernote platform out of Russia, but it's a global business. Then WeChat, we have an integration with WeChat in China. Again, it's a global application. However, 37,000 daily users of that integration in China alone. The first day that we launched the WeChat integration, we brought in more than 50,000 new users in one day, just from that integration in China. So again, through this expansion, we've been able to take advantage of much larger platforms and or much smaller companies around the world and grow our user base quickly and effectively through the developer community. So to sum up, one of the things that I think is interesting for any of you who have been following Evernote, we recently started our first accelerator program, which actually the class is going to graduate this Thursday. And you know, so you have 1 month residencies of 6 different companies at the Evernote headquarters in Redwood City. And for the first year, this was an extension of our Dev Cup, which we do every year. None of the finalists were actually from the US. Every single one of them was from a different country other than the US, and that's never actually happened before. Now, we didn't choose them based on location, but it just so happened that most of the interesting development that we saw was not coming from the US, and we were able to have one of the most global classes of developers that we've ever integrated, and they've come up with some really amazing applications. We've got Pistachio, which is a blogging platform that runs off of Evernote. We've got Context Booster from Germany, which lets you basically automatically bring in related information from the web into your Evernote notes. Biscuit, which is a language application as well that's coming out of South Korea, that basically every time you see a foreign word that you want to highlight, it stores the translation and definition into Evernote and then lets you study it using Peek to learn new languages. So it's just been a really, really cool group of developers that have come into Evernote, again, purely through this API, purely through the platform, developing local solutions that can be used outside of the US without us having to develop them ourselves and give a very local experience to an extremely global product. So that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, you had quite some interest from Twitter.
Oh, Lord.
So what mistake with your development of APIs did you learn from the most, and how did you implement change?
Well, it's hard to say. I don't know if I would call it a mistake. I think that from the original source of, or in looking at the APIs and how we've actually promoted it, I think where we've run into a little bit of limitation is promoting it through the standard communities that we usually have worked with. So again, I mentioned that I just went to Africa and we had 800,000 users in Africa. That's across all of Africa, which comparatively is a relatively small number. But one of the things that I started talking about was our API, and no one even knew that we had it. So that was kind of something that when you think about the engagement with regular communities, say in Germany or in standard places where you look at development, we probably went for too narrow of a set and wound up getting a lot of the same applications. The other thing is through our original Evernote trunk, we wound up having so many applications on there that we were promoting. It was actually very difficult for people to find some of the third-party applications. So we just relaunched the App Center, and now we have a much more curated set of what are the applications that we're actually showing to people.
So 2 people actually asked very similar questions. One person wanted to know what level of localization is necessary with your API to drive developer engagement, and somebody else was asking specifically, how is it tailored for Japan?
So as far as the localization, what we do from our side is we invest in the search and the management capabilities of different languages. So for example, a big part of Evernote is you can search handwritten notes. So like if you handwrite notes in a notebook and then you take a picture of that, you can search it. Being able to search different languages and different characters in handwriting is actually quite complex. So that's where we actually engage the most. We now search 31 different languages in handwriting, including Asian languages and Cyrillic, et cetera. So it kind of goes across the character set board. So where we've invested in localization is really about the application itself, and then the search capabilities of that application are also heavily localized, along with the developer materials and information too. But that's really where we've spent our main time. Japan is similar. We've partnered with SoftBank. We've partnered with a couple of other different companies, and so we work closely with them as well to develop the reach within the Japan market. But other than that, the API itself isn't necessarily that different.
Right. One of the things that I know this is a relatively new announcement for you guys, I think is very cool, is the physical products that are utilizing your API. The whole Internet of Things discussion obviously is a very hot topic. You hear a lot about it with regard to the kind of the connected home, also things with personal monitoring devices, but then. In general, has your experience been in your first month of having those on the market? I know I've heard some people talk about the fact that there are really no standards for that posing a problem. What's your experience been a month in?
Well, for the market itself, it's things like, we have the scanner, we have the Jot script via Donut. So we have a few different physical products that we've worked very, very closely on the integration with. It's a little bit different. We're also integrated from a wearable standpoint in Google Glass and the Samsung Galaxy Gear. There's a few different things that we're doing on the wearable front, which is very interesting, but we're very early on what's happening on the wearable front.
Right.
So that's really a great exercise in figuring out exactly how people are going to use wearables and how people want to access this information. Because we actually have a whole group within Evernote called the Augmented Intelligence Group.
That sounds like fun.
It's fun. And it's really about how can you figure out...
They sit in the basement and have like a lot of screens around them.
That's a really good idea. We should build a basement just so we can put them down there.
Sounds like the thing you need a secret elevator to get down there.
No windows for you. No, it's an interesting group because it's a lot about how do we actually anticipate what people need without being creepy. So, there's lots of ways that you can serve people information proactively. But people don't necessarily want too much information served proactively because it can be a little strange.
Yeah.
So the example, the way that we think about it is, Evernote is there to make you smarter. We want to, Phil talks a lot about we want to be the Nike for your brain. So Nike is for people who really want to be fit. We're for people who really want to be smart. So the interesting thing that we look at is with Evernote Hello, which is the application that lets you capture business cards and people that you meet in different circumstances. Wouldn't it be great if you met someone at a conference 2 years later and your watch comes up and tells you, oh, you met this person 2 years ago and here's what you talked about when you met them because your notes are in Evernote. Wouldn't that be really, really cool? Or, you go to a place that you haven't been in a little while and it brings up and it says, do you know that you have 5 notes from the last time you were here and here's what they're about. So we're working on those sorts of processes of, yes, wearables are wonderful, but wearables are only wonderful if they actually provide you something that you need at the time you need it.
Right. All right. Well, I think that's it for questions. Thanks so much. That was very...